I can help do stuff.
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, it's
Good.
No, but anyway, that's, and it's
not that I care.
usually when I get tired, it's.
Right.
Well, it's 6:30, so I'll call this regular meeting of the Sturgis Common Council to order, Monday, February 6th. First item's approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Got a first by Becca, second by Mike. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. We've got an agenda. Please stand, remove cover, and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are you cold?
Informational reports are none included in this meeting's packet, but that's a spot where we include previous minutes and information from past activities. Item 5 is announcements and praise. I'd like to take a moment and pray if you'd like to join me. Heavenly Father, we appreciate the ability to come to you in prayer and appreciate the ability to meet here as a group. And we look for your wisdom. We look for your guidance. We thank you for the gift of grace. And through faith, we are saved in Christ Jesus. And in his name we pray. Amen. I've got just a couple of quick notes here. We got a holiday coming up on 2 Mondays from now, which pushes City Council back to Tuesday the 21st. Also, that includes all city activities, including the garbage pickup and things like that. So, vast majority of the city is closed 2 Mondays from now. Any other announcements and praise? Council have anything to add at this point? That was all the notes I had. Item 5.1 is a praise, and I'm going to turn it over to Travis Parker and let you take the wheel here for a moment. We've got a check to present to the Crisis Intervention Center or shelter, so we got a rep there. I saw him come in. Yep. You want a microphone? I don't think so. You can talk loudly. We usually yeah, you get it.
Sorry. You gotta scoot out of the way.
Yeah, I'm getting out of it.
Okay, so sometimes we get products that we're supposed to give away at the store. I figured it's a lot better idea to put out a raffle instead of just doing a drawing. That way we can give the money to some of our local charities. So this happened to be our fall raffle from last year. And we let the winner pick the charity. And what was her name? Janet. Janet Moore. So she chose the Crisis Center. So here's a check for $1,500 to the Crisis Center.
You don't actually get this check.
We're going to reuse it. It'll be in the mail tomorrow. Not of that size, though.
Yeah, a smaller version.
So, Travis, we'll look for the next agenda item to be for you for the Sturgis Liquor update, and I'll turn it back over to you, bud.
Okay. So, 2023 was another pretty solid year at the liquor store. We were up in sales from 2022. We were down a little bit in profitability. That was mostly my fault. We, a lot of things took price hikes, and I waited before I raised our prices or to keep our margins kind of equal with what else was around town. A lot of people tried to do that just to keep our prices low. So especially the consumables and the tobacco, the cigarettes, things like that. So even though we were up in sales, we were down just a hair in profitability. So it was still a pretty good year, comparatively speaking, when you go back to 2017, which was my first year at the store. That year, at the end of the year, we ended up with $2.28 million in sales. And then last year, in 2022, we ended up with $3.3 million in sales. So we were able to grow over $1 million in 6 years. Just to put that in daily terms, that actually gives us improved average of 2,880 cents or $88 a day that we grew in sales. And I can tell you now in 2017, we had some days we didn't even do $2,800 in sales. So that was nice. In 2023, we will contribute $425,000 into the general fund. That works out to $35,000 a month. This is enough to fund 86% of the community center's budget, so therefore the taxpayers don't have to come up with that money. We have actually increased that 708% in the last 10 years. And it does not include the revenue from us leasing our parking lot to the vendors during the rally. So that's just straight liquor sales that we make that money in. A recent zip code study showed that 24% of the total sales were from outside the Sturgis zip code. The city of Sturgis represents 70% of that zip code. But we still, obviously, we have the rally, so we see a lot of zip codes coming from the outside of Meade County and the rally. But even during the other 350 days of the year, we're still hanging right about that 24%. So that's a plus. We actually have become a draw in town with some of the things that we do, especially our raffles. We just had 2 people come up from Rapid City today and bought stuff from us. And it's probably because of our selection that we have. We're able to carry a lot more inventory than some of the smaller stores in Rapid City because they just don't have the space. So with our competitive prices, it does seem to draw a significant number of people from the Northern Hills. And even though I didn't think we'd ever see it, it does actually bring some people in from Rapid City. At the end of the 22 fiscal year, the liquor sales were 279% higher than the statewide per capita average. Of all the bars in Sturgis, they were 164% higher than the statewide per capita average, and the grocery stores were only 0.5% higher than the statewide per capita average. So as you can tell, the liquor is significantly higher than the bars and even the grocery stores. Here's the part that we're actually probably proudest the most. This is kind of dear to us because last year we actually had a little bit more that we were able to give away in charities, but this year was still good. We were able to do $10,000 to the Sturgis Brown High School Scholarship Fund. We did $1,200 to Operation Ride Home, which is a charity event put on by Brown Foreman, where they use that money to bring deployed military members home for the holidays. We were able to do 2 $1,750 scholarships to Sturgis Brown High School through our engraving program. We just gave away the $1,500 to the women's shelter, and then earlier this year, we were able to give away $1,500 Sturgis Meals on Wheels. That was our summer raffle. And we are getting ready to do another raffle that will start shortly after the Super Bowl. Again, 3 solid items, a generator, a Traeger grill, a nice gun case, and then some specific allocated bourbons that are actually really high in demand. And that's usually what brings in anywhere from, once you pay for the bourbon, that usually gives you about $1,500 to $2,000 left over to give away to the charities. We also do a lot with just nonprofits around town where we engrave bottles, certain logos for people. Just last week we did one for the Anna Westberg Cancer Fundraiser. We've done bottles for the Midwest Honor Flight, which what they do is they take veterans and fly them out to DC so they can visit the wall. And that was, the lady that came and got those bottles, she was almost in tears after she saw them. And then we did another one this summer for NeighborWorks. But that's just a drop in the bucket. We probably do anywhere from 3 to 4 bottles a month, which, it's not a huge cost to the liquor store, but it sure seems to help for the community. And in 2023, what we're looking for is we've got a van that we bought last year, or 2 years ago. And basically what happens is when you order liquor, you either have the choice of going and getting it yourself, or you have the choice to have it delivered to you. Well, every case of liquor comes with a $4 delivery fee. So once we got the van and we were able to go get our own liquor, that saved us approximately $37,000 in fees or in delivery fees last year. Now our vans, We've got a lot out of it. We're very proud of it. It's a nice van, but we're probably going to be looking for a new one here because it's getting a little high mileage. So maybe within the next year or so, we can look for that. And then our 2022 it would have been the 2022 audit that we just finished up in January, showed no variances in actual loss percentage of less than 1%. And I believe in 2017, it was around 2%. So we've cut that down quite a bit too. So this year we're going to try a new event. It's going to be called Bourbon and Vine. We're going to hold it at the Iron Horse, and it is going to be a bourbon and wine tasting event where we will sell tickets. We will attempt to have more raffles. We'll have more stuff there. And every time we have a raffle, it does go to charity. We don't take any of the money to the store. We're trying to work on a drive-through window. I don't know if that will come to fruition this year or next, but it's one of those deals that Daniel and I have talked about, and there's a lot of pros and cons to it. We still have to kind of work out the details of it. We really want to continue the enhancement of the rally experience, and through that is a lot of our engraving process. We sell about 7 to 9 barrels of Jack Daniel's single barrel whiskey a year during the rally, and that is 240 bottles per barrel. So when we engrave those, we also do a custom engraving for everybody that wants it done, and then we charge a fee, and the fee is what we contribute to the Brown-Forman Scholarship Fund. So it's a nice thing for the people that come in. They can get some custom engravings, and we can make some money for another scholarship or a charity. Expanded outreach to neighboring communities, detailing the wide selection, price, and rewards of the program at Sturgis Liquor. We are, I have been told, the only pure liquor store that has a rewards program, and we have people coming all the way from Faith and Buffalo that are in on that, and Union Center, so that's nice to have. It's just more of a draw for them. And like I said, we are actually starting to draw some people out of Rapid City to come up, which I never thought would happen, but we are pretty solid with the Northern Hills community, even Spearfish and Deadwood Leeds, so we've got to keep working on that. Anybody have any questions?
I guess one comment on the audit, it's way faster now too, before what we had to deal with, and the current process is just so much more efficient.
Oh, the inventory?
Yeah.
Oh, our first year was awful.
Right. Now it's,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys get done fast.
We didn't get done till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we only did half the store. Last year we did the entire store by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it wasn't a very good thing because then we had to wait for the state auditor to come. So this year we did split it back in 2 days, and I think both days we were done by 9:30 in the morning. So it goes a lot faster. It goes a lot faster when your inventory is down, and it goes a lot faster when it's more organized. Yes.
Any other thing for Travis? Appreciate you what you're doing over there, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Item 7 is city manager's report, so I'll turn it over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Attached, I do have the end of the year key performance or KPI report that includes some of the metrics for each of the individual departments. If there are any questions from anyone, I'd be happy to answer them, but in the interest of time, I don't plan on going over every number, but it's attached, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond, or I'm available throughout this week or next week to respond as well. Then going over payroll, there are just a few minor adjustments. I do want to make a note, though, on 7.3 for Halli. It does have the incorrect wage in there. Her wage should be $2,885 per pay period. I apologize for that clerical error. So $2,885 for Halli. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Daniel. Item 8 is consider consent calendar. We have 8.1 through 8.3 is it tonight. We got the approval of the consent. We have the minutes from previous meeting, and then we have setting a public hearing. Does council wish to remove any of those items and discuss them individually? How about anybody in the public? Remove point 1, point 2, or point 3 on the consent.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Got a first by Becca to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Dean. Any last discussion? We do have minutes, so let's go ahead and roll call. We'll start with you, Preston.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
I'm yes. Mike?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Becca?
Yes.
Consent calendar passes unanimously. Item 9 is approval of the claims. Questions, comments, concerns from council on tonight's bills we're paying? How about public discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve.
We got a first by Dean to approve the claims.
I'll second.
We got a second by Preston and a third by Becca.
Yeah.
Any last discussion? Public or council? We'll go ahead and roll call this too. Becca, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And Preston.
Yes.
Bills are paid. 10.0 is public hearings. All we have within that subset is the approval of an SEL for the American Roadhouse. This is for the Challenge for Charities Gala that's coming up a week from, actually this Saturday. All the paperwork was included within the packet, insurance and all needs there. Is there questions, comments, concerns from council? How about public input on this public hearing and issuance of a special event license?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the SEL for the Loud American for the Charities Gala.
We have a first on the floor.
I'll second it.
There's a second by Tony. Any last discussion? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Reports is 11.1, the second reading of an ordinance. This is the community cable television franchises, and Mr. Miller's got our staff report. And turn to you for discussion on the second reading, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you noted, this is the second reading of the cable franchise agreement, or the ordinance. The ultimate purpose of this is to renew the cable franchise agreement between the city and, I believe, Mid-Continent Communications and Blue Peak Fiber. The current agreement is expired back in January 13th, and we're just kind of running over until the status of this one is approved, or however the council sees fit. The terms are almost identical, absent back in 2019, the FCC updated a lot of the franchise agreements for cable franchises for local governments. This incorporates those FCC changes. Otherwise, it's the same as the prior agreement. Both Mid-Continent and Blue Peak have reviewed and approved this, and there hasn't been any changes throughout the discussion, the first reading, or to the current version. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Eric, public or council, concerning second reading?
I'd move to approve the ordinance.
Got a first by Mike,
Second.
second by Aaron. Any last discussion? We'll go ahead and roll call this ordinance. I'll start with myself. I'm yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
And Becca?
Yes.
Second reading's approved. Thanks, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Procedurally, once that's posted in the official paper, it'll be 20 days after that. It'll go into effect. So, process is complete. Item 11.2 is approval to consideration to approve design services for our adventure park. Mr. Ainsley, I'll turn it over to you. I see you're getting some information here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have heard from council members several times that sometimes my presentations are a little longer, so I assure you that this is a succinct version. But just to bring everyone back to the entire purpose of this adventure park is to fulfill several of the goals that are contained in your comprehensive plan that was adopted more than 10 years ago. To offer parks within comfortable walking distances of several Sturgis residents, to connect neighborhoods and commercial centers with bike paths, to connect the city's trail and path systems to neighboring federal lands to provide quality park services south of I-90, to look to ways to extend the Black Hills experience beyond traditional park and recreation areas and into other community systems, to identify a location for an outdoor water feature, and then also as a portion of not the park but the overall development will provide mixed residential styles and densities to accommodate a range of housing preferences and needs, and also provide a variety of housing for residents at all stages of their lives, including young adults and seniors. The city did prepare in December a request for proposals to find experienced partners who would be able to develop the actual design and specifications and construction plans for the adventure park. And just so everyone is aware, this would just be for the public portion of it, so not the entire acreage. This is just for the publicly owned portion. I believe about 18 acres is what it's being looked at. The city did receive one complete response. That comprised of a team of the following, including CRS and Tallgrass. And both of those companies participated in the feasibility study that the city contracted with them more than 12 months ago. And then also Kyle Trelaw with Van Acker Development, who has experience in engineering design and new project design, and is also looking at being the developer for the adjoining private development. The proposed services for this would include the conceptual design, which is 30% of construction. So we're not talking about going all the way back to a feasibility study. It's really the initial conceptual design. The final design, which is 100% bid package, the goal of that would be to have that completed by August 21st. A business pro forma, that plan would be submitted by May 1st of this year, bidding, with the bid set to begin hopefully September 25. And again, these dates are approximate. They might move a little bit based on the city's ability to meet submission deadlines, and award that bid on October 2nd. And then construction administration, with the construction hopefully beginning to occur this October 23rd, and substantial completion by next August. This again will require input on amenities and business goals from the city. So when you look at the pro forma, the city will need to determine the goals, whether it's fully self-sustaining. Also, are the amenities available for free for public use? So what amenities would be available for free for the public? Is there a difference in the cost structure or the pricing structure for residents versus visitors? Different things like that the council will need to determine. Just to forewarn people, that will require some council input over the next couple of months, and so do anticipate some time being set aside in your future public meetings where some of that will need to be discussed, and then the council will have to provide that direction to the consultants so that they can include that in the business plan along with the final amenities. But the consultant will combine the goals with market factors to develop that pro forma. The funding of this, which the plan design, the business pro forma, as well as the construction administration, is about $573,000. That is funded through the TIF financing that the council approved a couple months ago on this project. There's going to be an outside financial institution that the loan will be guaranteed by future tax receipts of the associated private development. So again, so people understand why that private development is so important for this, is that's private development is what actually generates the funds that are necessary for the developing of the plans, and also will be ultimately providing the majority of the funds to construct the park. So that's why that private development is important, because without that private development, the city would have to come up with the funding for that. Are there any questions?
How about discussion further from council? I guess I'd like to add the fact that the charrettes, that information was included in the packet, and as we move through this process, we've tried to make sure we've engaged as many people as possible and take the input that helps give council guidance as we navigate this and hopefully come to completion to something pretty awesome on the south side of town. So
Do you have a
go ahead,
question?
Aaron. Yep, go ahead.
When we had those public meetings here, Daniel here, I don't remember exactly when we had the dollars that they had to put in the boxes. How much did that outcome of that inform the initial guidance to the developers on what type of activities are going to be a part of that adventure park?
That, if I can figure out how to get the screen to change over, Counselor, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
As the mayor described in there. Okay, really? The outcome of that, there we go, okay. Or the results of that was what was included in the request for proposals. So the top items that were selected was what was included in the request for proposals. And I think at a very near council meeting, whether that's your next council meeting or the one after, the council is going to really have to determine what are the absolute amenities that will, no matter what, be included, and then what are kind of the secondary tier and the tertiary tier, and provide that information to the consultants so that they very quickly can start pricing things to determine truly how much that is, because the price estimates in this exercise, they were determined by the consultant about a year ago. So, you know, they should be close, but they're not necessarily guaranteed. So the council will need to provide some input fairly soon. I think it would probably be most helpful if it would be at your next council meeting, but if not then hopefully your first one in March, to again kind of look through here and say, you know, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, and then beyond that, you know, here are the other ones you would like to see.
Okay, thanks, Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from council? Questions?
I guess I'd just like to point out how well I think that the process went, starting with the committee, going to multiple levels of public meetings, public involvement through all of this, good levels of plans. I mean, obviously, there's nothing to compare this exactly to in our region, but city manager has done a good job of presenting the information that leads to successful implementation of this, and I hope this is the project we're looking for. Myself, I'm interested in the park piece, but the opportunities it provides our community year-round outside of the water feature is exciting, and I think these are the sort of projects that build community.
And economic development.
How about public input or from the developers at all? Anything to add, clarify, questions from anyone? Come on up to the microphone, please. Just what you wanted to hear, huh? We'll need your name and for you to speak in there so you can go on the record, please.
Karen Linus, the Park Committee. Just quickly, I don't know whether, because we had those meetings, there was enough people to make those decisions on what we should have. I feel that we should probably engage Ron Romans. He's done all these, that maybe what would be the best things to start with for you, council, is what I feel. I mean, because I just don't think we had enough input with those meetings that we had. So that would be my opinion, is to maybe search out him and find out what are the top things that really go over well, and then we can go to our list of what was the favorites.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a compromise too, in terms of the ones, because there's a lot of popular ones here, which may exceed what we have available for revenue to pay for it all. So we're going to have to probably find a balance there between what the communities have asked for in these meetings that we've had and what we can afford, at least starting off with, and try to find that balance there. There might be some things that were lower on the vote that we may end up doing because we can afford to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So that would just be my thought.
And to your point, Karen, appreciated the fact that we can down the road add different things. I mean, as we go forward, and the fact that we will continue the public discussion on this as we make further actions. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Mr. Mayor, I want to say that I concur with the fact that this is an evolutionary process. So we don't have to have everything right away off the bat. It could be where we have the footprint for the miniature golf or, some other activity that we have that planned for, but maybe that is not something that's, installed right out of the gate. I think that it's important to keep in mind that this is a process that we are beginning.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Kyle.
I just wanted to, Kyle Trelaw with Van Acker Developments, kind of reiterate exactly what you're saying. What we have is going to be that iterative process to really start. And we have Ron as part of the team to really kind of help on that pond design. He's got, his pond consultants that'll be working underneath him, but we're going to take basically the information from the proposal, lay out those initial concepts, be coming back with some basics on the business plan, the options. There's been a lot of talk on our team side on, how much of it's open to the public and then how that, how the security features work around that. So it will be that iterative process where we're going to be bringing information back and forth and just having the team on the city side set aside too to make some of those decisions so that we can keep everything moving on our side will be important as well.
Hey, Kyle, question for you. Do you have enough information from us in terms of priorities to initiate that process, or do you need more information in terms of priorities of activities and whatnot before you start?
We have enough information to come up with some initial concepts.
Okay.
And some
So we
background.
can wait for that information and then kind of
Right.
fine tune the priorities a little
Exactly.
bit. Okay,
I think if we tried to do it right now with this, we'd just be shooting in the dark.
makes sense.
And
Okay,
I think let us come back with some numbers and some ideas and concepts and then have discussions.
good to go.
I think we need to be cognizant of future maintenance and replacement costs for the activities as well. And are there any government organizations that need to be involved in the process for downstream water diversion and everything else? USDA? Just a question.
Sure, we've definitely included some time, so we're gonna be building within that floodplain area. So we've got time involved to work with FEMA specifically to kind of work on downstream areas. We're not working with the USDA so much. They generally are working in that dam region. The engineers, though, we've got engineering company set aside to start the hydraulic study. They'll be looking at the capacity of, let's say, the culvert underneath the railroad and what we can do through that channel. So we've got those guys all ready to start looking and making sure that everything that we've got discharging will be safe and per state law and federal laws.
Thank you.
You said that dam region, is that North Dakota?
That's what I was wondering too. So, he's so mad about the USDA. Any other discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
In regards to the professional services agreement, as I was reading through this, I have a question on item number 5, the cooperation with Black Hills Trails. Is there a reason why that is specifically worded? And that's a bullet point in this agreement. I guess my concern stems from the fact that I don't recall other nonprofits being specifically listed in our development agreements, and I don't want to see, this project being hung up because there's disagreement or something's not being satisfied. So I'm just curious as to why number 5 is specifically spelled out. And it's not that I don't think Black Hills Trails, doesn't have input or, shouldn't be given an opinion. I just want to know why it's specifically in this agreement.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I could respond to that. That was something I did ask the city attorney to insert. That was based off of some correspondence I received from a council member to try to ensure that the consultants were guided by experienced individuals who have constructed single track in the past. There wasn't as much concern as I understood about the construction of a of the bike paths, but more the single track, and making sure that the single track was able to be used long-term and not necessarily be built in such a way that it would cause erosion or cause issues like that. So the exact verbiage of that actually came from me to the city attorney. And I think, you know, if the council would like that to be changed or altered, I would have no concern with that.
Well, my concern is in the statement, where it says the consultant agrees to reasonably and in good faith cooperate and coordinate with Black Hills Trails. I think that is a very broad definition. I think certainly input, should be given by this organization, but as far as, cooperate and coordinate, there seems to be some kind of room as far as what specifically is that defining.
Go ahead, Mr. Marshall. Use your microphone, though. Please.
A pox on my family for my failure to do so. The city attorney to whom Mr. Ainsley refers was not me. I think that language can be improved, and if the council would give me that direction, I would be happy to revise that in a manner that I think would be more acceptable to all of the parties involved.
Thank you, and we accept your offer.
Well, could it be, Mr. Marshall, where that is stricken from this agreement and it could be inserted later on in the process?
I think that is a matter entirely within council's prerogative.
Okay. And again, my point in this is not that I don't, it's not that I don't want Black Hills Trails at the table or that their input is not, worthwhile. And certainly their experience and the hard work that they've done is, it's a wonderful thing. I just, again, I don't recall a nonprofit being included in this way in our development agreements, and I think that it is setting a precedence in which we need to be aware of, and I think it's something that could be included later on in the process.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Given those concerns, I would be happy to present a list of alternatives for that paragraph that council can consider. And those alternatives would go from deleting it entirely to some middle ground, to some ground that extends consideration for Black Hills Trails input that's beyond what the city has received from any nonprofits in the past, so that the council can make an informed decision about the extent to which they want to engage.
Kyle, you had something to add.
Couple things, and I don't disagree. What I would say, number one, we're excited to get started. Another 2 weeks on top of, already being a couple weeks past what we taught. We're basically a month back. So if there's any way to move it along quicker, that would be good, just to start the process from my side. I don't have any issues with the language as it is. I understand that's not necessarily the issue here. It's kind of setting a precedence and what that does going forward. We do have within our proposal time set aside to work with Black Hills Trails and other local community groups, right? So that's already built into the numbers of what we have. I don't have an issue with it, being revised here or leaving it as is or deleting it all. Either way, we're going to be working with Black Hills Trails, as that is one of the key components of both the adventure park and the development as a whole is making those connections right through this. So it's involved one way or the other. The timing would be the more of the issue on my side.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
One way in which the council could accommodate that is to approve the agreement as proposed with an understanding that there may be an amendment forthcoming to address some of the council's concern with that language.
That makes sense to me for sure because of the timing of it. I think the spirit of what's intended here is to make sure of connectivity both on the new area of development along with pre-existing trails and pre-existing bike paths and things within the city. So I think just the cooperation and the connectivity and the planning is what's being looked for. So I think that can be achieved for sure if an addendum is needed.
You know, just a comment too. I'm not sure what we've done in the past, but if we were doing something like a large baseball complex, I would think we would probably want to have our baseball group kind of be a part of that, that synergy there to be able to develop something. So, you know, this one right now is, you're looking at the activities that we have, you know, probably the only one that we have right now that I can think of at least, that is the bike trails that relates to an organization that, a nonprofit organization, which is in our community. But if we did have other type of activities, sports activities or whatever that may be, where there's an organization, maybe that's part of the language there, where it might be a little bit more broad to tie those type of stakeholders into the process, not so much to lead the process or take control of the process, but to inform the process.
And that's an excellent point too, because, you know, part of what we've discussed and we have kind of planned for is this regional trail hub. So we're not looking at, you know, necessarily just a spot where you can park. This is going to be that, you know, you can come here, have a whole regional idea of what the trails are. You can, you know, go up Van Arker Canyon, you can go to the dams, you can look at and see what they have in Spearfish, and it gives you all of these options as a kind of that one place stop to go. And with that, there's going to need to be that partner just the same as running the aquatic center, where you're going to have that group running that. You're going to need somebody to be involved to make sure that information is accurate, up to date, and you know, we can build the site, build the facilities, but it's going to need to be updated as time goes on. So that just kind of an add-on point there.
So I guess just in conclusion, you know, Mr. Mayor, I concur fully with your remarks in that in no way am I questioning or wanting the removal of the connectivity with Black Hills Trails. My concern is with this language and again, the inclusion of a nonprofit in our development agreement. So I guess I would like to see maybe a change.
On the fly?
No,
or
not right
addendum?
now, but coming back from our city attorney.
So is that a motion with the hopes of a future discussion on an addendum?
Yes, and you know, maybe what needs to be done is it isn't just Black Hills Trails that's the stakeholder. You know, maybe it's another, you know, proposal that seats at the table when we talk about stakeholders includes this entity as well as others. But I just don't think this needs to be in the agreement necessarily in this form.
Just so council is aware, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I will. I've been approached by the horse riding associations if there's going to be ample parking for horse trailers so that they can also enjoy the trails in the Black Hills. So this does have concern. Pretty soon we got dualies and 18 horse trailers in the parking lot, and the council needs to be aware that these options are out there that we need to plan for now, if that's going to happen.
So could it be where maybe number 5 is removed from this development agreement? However, at the next meeting in which we present what we think the details of the park development should be, we can also at that time include in, you know, all of what could be the stakeholders that are involved in this process.
If I may, once
Go
again,
ahead, yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to do whatever the council directs. I think there's merit in all of the comments that have been made. It would be good government for the city to adopt a policy about including stakeholders in any development agreements or tax increment financing districts or planned unit developments where appropriate. so that you can present to the public the idea that you welcome and indeed encourage the participation in those groups, from those groups, in the projects that come before you for your consideration.
So you're looking, okay, so Mr. Mayor, if I may, please, I would like to move the approval of the design services contract for the Adventure Park in, with number 5 being removed to be considered at our next meeting, along with the stakeholders' processes in this in this design development, as well as I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Are you talking for future stuff too, like the policy that Mr. Marshall referred to?
I think because
That's pretty fast.
you know, yes, because we talk about developing the processes, you know, that we've that we utilize. I think that this is one of those things that fall under that category, and it merits further discussion.
I don't want this project to stall.
Neither do
So
I.
I'm going to second that so that we can move forward with the planning and the design phase. We'll figure this out in council chambers.
So we got a first and a second on the floor. Go ahead, Kyle, you're gonna say something.
Just one comment on that, and I think we're all on the same page here, but it's gonna take more than 2 weeks to come back with.
Right.
So that will, I mean, I'm gonna initiate that process as soon as we get the contract. That will take, I think it's inside there, so.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So we got a first and a second on the floor to approve the design services for the adventure park with a slight adjustment with future further discussion.
Further discussion and development. Yes, thank you.
Can we read that back?
Do we need to be specific about the paragraph in question?
Well, the motion is to
Do you want me
remove
to
5.
restate
Yeah,
it?
go ahead. Speak it.
Okay. I move to approve the Adventure Park Design Services contract, removing number 5, and having future discussion and development of the stakeholder processes, not only within this project, but future projects, TIFs, etc., as well.
I'll
Still second that, Mike?
I'll second the amendment to the amendment.
I would like it read back.
What's the minute state for what you have for the motion, just for clarity?
To approve the design services contract, removing number 5, and have future discussion and development of processes for stakeholder input for this project as well as other future development projects.
So we got a first and a second on the floor. Any last comments? Public or council? Bonnie, come join them.
If I may,
Go ahead.
Megan Kingsbury, Van Acker Development. I would like clarification. Perhaps it was stated, but I don't think it's very clear, whether we can expect number 5 to be reintroduced in its entirety or altogether retracted from this proposal.
Well, the motion is to remove it from this proposal tonight with future actions and discussions to come.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may. So my intent with this is not to remove Black Hills Trails from the process. It is just the concern over the precedence of this language in a development agreement. But I think, as was stated by the mayor and myself and Mr. Treelor, you know, including Black Hills Trails, the connectivity, the consultation, that is that is not the intent at all. They need to be a part of the process because their experience in building the regional trails, is beyond. And I think that, they're a very productive entity for our town. So again, it is not to remove them from the process at all. It is just to clarify at what point do the stakeholders come in, and not only for this project, but for future projects as well.
And essentially what you'll come back with is either some sort of overall guidance to kind of guide this kind of situation with future city contracts, and then an amendment to this one to insert
Yes,
that
sir.
language into this, of which we'd have to agree to,
Yes.
of course. But in any way, shape, or form, we're going forward, and we will be meeting with Black Hills Trails
sir.
to initiate that process.
Yes.
And
Yes,
as
that's
part
correct.
of the first bringing back to the council at some point in time, that first plan will include the trails
Yes.
and that
Yep.
initial
We're moving
development.
forward with the trails as
Yes.
planned.
Right, because I think, and I apologize, I cannot remember, and I did not make note of where in the packet I read that future stakeholders, will be invited for their input. I think that that's very important. And so, again, I just think we need to clarify where in the process that will happen, and who that will be. And that's really my point, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
if I may, my understanding of what we're working towards is that at some point, Kyle, we will have a contract, an amended contract, that will have basically this paragraph, but it's going to give you and us a more broad capability to work with different entities, Black Hills Trails, whomever else that might be involved in that. And then we have it all within the contract, and it provides us that flexibility as things continue to change and evolve and maybe some new opportunities. We don't always have to go back and change the contract to be able to add in a different agency or entity. We'll have something there that allows us to kind of catch all that together.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bonnie, you want to join them up there? Is your question answered?
This wicket got a lot stickier than it needed to. And I support Becca in what she's saying. It has been the intent of the council and the city, as you move forward on anything, to be inclusive and to be connected and to serve the people of this town. And there is nothing, unless Mr. Marshall can tell me, otherwise I read it fast, I didn't read it well, but I don't see anything in there that says you can't start consulting with people. But the elephant I see standing in the room is that balance between regard and respect and valuing people who have gone before and worked hard in this community for many years and not giving up control. And that's all it's about. It's Becca seems to have felt, and I felt so as well, that the way 5 was stated did not make it clear just what the requirements were on regarding every desire of that particular entity. And I think it's right. I think we do need to put more of our thought into who does have a vested interest, who has served this area well, who does have knowledge and understanding of developing some of these recreational and natural things. So, but there's nothing that I can see is there that is going to hold Kyle up in moving forward, because there's nothing that says he can't have input from others.
Bonnie, the term you used was inclusive. And as I listened to Becca and what she's looking for, which makes sense to me, is to have language that makes it more inclusive and not
Exactly.
very focused to one stakeholder. There may be some additional stakeholders. So I think the intent is to improve this, to make it more inclusive. Use
Well,
the
and I
term that
think
you
we
had.
know in a town this size, as soon as you list one stakeholder, there are going to be 3 more pop up and say, what am I, chopped liver? You know, I think that we do have to be broader in that inclusion, and I don't think it necessarily, after it gets worked on, has to name names. I think there are ways of describing those who should be consulted and included for input without naming names, creating hard feelings, and without giving up control to have to jump to each and every demand.
Thanks, Bonnie. Any further discussion? Public or council?
Hi, Allison Creed here. Sorry, I was a little late, so I missed some of the presentation. I just hope that moving forward, we can continue to include the public in the planning and development of the park. And I hope if Black Hills Trails wants to be number 5, I hope that we can work on fundraising together. I know the Sturgis Aquatics Committee, we've already raised quite a bit of money. And I guess I'm kind of at a standstill. Do we keep raising money, or are we the only group raising money, or is there enough money already raised? And I'd also like to see a 5-year and a 10-year plan on where do we visualize this park, not just now, but in the future. That's it.
Thanks, Allison. And I think that's coming down, as we go through motion by meeting, as the developers come back with more information and things like that, so.
I don't want to hold up this, you've got a motion on the floor that needs to be dealt with, but I do have one more.
Come on up, Bonnie, hobble up there.
You'll remember where you're going?
Yep.
Keep her sitting.
I want to be sure that I understood correctly that mapping that we saw at the time that we did the input game was sort of a dream plan. That we are not, and by moving forward at this point, we are not necessarily married to the details, the amounts, and the layouts of that. That there will be, as this project progresses, more opportunity for input, and I think that's what Allison was saying as well. I mean, there's an intent and purpose in preliminary fundraising to help this project, and one of the expressed concerns was, and in the documentation today it says about 100 homes, but when that picture was out there, I could be blind as a bat, but I counted at least 120, I thought, or I don't know what a lot line looks like. And so that's a piece of it that I hope that we will revisit, and I think that's part of the funding issue. Again, we're not always calling a spade, but I think that's part of the funding issue, is trying to reduce what we have to commit to residential in order to still pull this whole thing together. So I hope that we're not going invisibly past those mile markers that allow us additional input on that.
They're still coming.
Because I do think that is a valid concern that's out there and in conversations, but those conversations are not coming here to this table.
And specifically, though, the ones that are coming that we've talked about tonight are specific to the adventure park. The private side of it is still in the works and obviously still part of a plan, but one's a private, one's a public. Yep.
And I appreciate that clarification tonight. I hadn't really seen it that way, but that helped me tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Mike.
go ahead.
I don't need to slow it down. I just wanted to kind of clarify the question here. That, no, absolutely. What you'll see is going to be options. Everything that's been discussed, the different, and they're going to come with budgets and price tags and maintenance costs, and you'll kind of get a whole picture of the different options, and those will all be presented back to council. So we're going to start at that level, kind of all the lists of the wants that we've gotten so far, and put it all together and provide some conceptual packages with some numbers that you can then take and pick and choose, and we'll make, you know, those final decisions on how to actually go forward with it.
Mr. Mayor, I call the question.
Well, we got a first and a second on the floor with further addendum to come. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. That motion carries unanimously. Appreciate you guys and look forward to the next step. And it's a work in progress for sure, but it's going to be awesome.
When
Yes.
do we start construction?
It's on there. Item 11.3 is city manager or city attorney report on the Office of City Manager Subcommittee. Mr. Marshall, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the mayor's suggestion, I prepared a report and resolution that would extend the working life of the Office of City Manager Subcommittee because its work remains incomplete. The report and resolution calls for the reappointment of the existing members who bring with them a working knowledge of what the subcommittee has done and where they would like to see it go. Previously, council reviewed a survey about the policy and procedure manual and Title VII ordinances and provided direction to me to draft ordinances. And I think the ongoing existence of the subcommittee will help in vetting any work product that I come up with and will facilitate a productive discussion of whatever proposals come before council. With that, my final observation is it doesn't change the direction council previously provided to me. It only extends the time within which that direction can be implemented and further recommendations made if the subcommittee believes they are appropriate. And with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions that members of the council may have.
I don't have any questions. I have the comment of the fact that it slightly changes past practices as we move from May to May. We've always committed to the appointments of committees and things like that during the first meeting in May. I think the point's very relevant on the fact that as we've moved forward over the past year, there's been developments, there's been working product, and it makes sense that that crew continues together. But I guess the point being is that a little bit out of the normal process, but it's obviously not May yet either, so. Further discussion, questions for Mark, public or council? I guess one other comment, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Marshall, but resolutions are only good for 1 year, and for something to last beyond a resolution's life is the need for ordinance. Is that a fair statement as a legal aspect, or?
That's a reasonably fair statement, but I think one can make a countervailing argument that there was no end date imposed by the ordinance.
Right.
So if one wanted to pick nits, you could say it continues to exist. By the same token, you can say that it expired of its own weight. By continuing the existence of the subcommittee, all of those worthless discussion points are eliminated, and the committee is authorized to continue the charge given to it by the council.
Understood.
I would just like to bring up again that, this committee was formed because of requests and concerns from within the community. And as we're going through the process, we have found no wrongdoings, no anything. Basically, I would say that, and anybody that's on the committee, feel free to jump in. But basically, we're just trying to make sure that everything that's being done is being done properly. And there's been no, I don't know if there was hope for smoking gun or something along those lines, but there's been nothing like that. I feel that everything is being run in a good way, and that we're basically going through the process right now to make sure, doing our due diligence to make sure that that is what's happening.
And to give clarity for duties and try to set up a sustainable system in place that makes sense for this council and future councils and anybody involved.
The validation of the process.
Mr. Mayor, one thing about having multiple members on a committee, you get different perspectives. And, my perspective is not so much from finding anything that we were doing wrong, more so from trying to find areas in terms of processes and who has responsibility and authority for what. And finding if the balance we have right now is the right balance, or if we need to make some recommendations to some adjustments. And so to me, it was about an opportunity just to improve, that balance. That was when we started all this over a year ago. That was the feedback that was coming back was, maybe we need to take a look at some of this stuff. And this is, our opportunity to do it. We've met quite a bit. Obviously, we've had some things that have, taken precedent with operations and things like that. That's why we need to continue on the process. So I would make a resolution to approve I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2023-17, the resolution extending the office of the resolution extending the office of the city manager subcommittee.
We got a first by Aaron.
Second.
We got a second by Mike. Any last discussion? Come on up, Bonnie. I think the last time you moved up here, the comment was made, get her a microphone. You move fast there.
I did, but see, I haven't been sitting very long.
Right.
Okay, you just said that these committees are ordinarily set and assigned in May. Is that what you were saying?
Correct, yep.
So why not extend this subcommittee until May, when you would be doing this anyway in the right rotation with everything else? Why do it till February of '24? Why not just take it until May to get it synced with your normal processes?
Mr. Mayor, if you may.
Go ahead, yeah.
As I understand this, Bonnie, is that this is a very specific special committee for a certain specific task. And at this point, once we're completed with that task, the committee would dissolve. Now, there has been discussions of making this a standing committee and continue having this meet whatever that regular period would be. But we haven't done that. We haven't made a decision to do that. So this one's a unique committee. This is not part of what's in the ordinances that we have a standing committee or boards, commissions that have people appointed to each and every year. This one's a very special one with a specific task. And at this point, once that task is complete, that committee would dissolve.
And I get that, but it's been in operation for a relatively short period of time. And by extending it at this point until May, when you're looking at all of your committees and deciding whether this should be a permanent committee or should continue for a short period, or, I mean, I just don't see where.
I just don't believe that by May, we will have
Be ready to move. Yeah.
to make that a recommendation to make this a standing committee.
But you could still extend its life in May again in
We
sync with
could,
everything else.
but right now, we can just, right now it goes for the next year. And and again, there's some opportunities here. One thing that as we've met as members of this committee, we've had this discussion, and it's not just necessarily always about the office of city manager, right? It's about, good governance within Sturgis in terms of, is our processes, our structure correct, and all those other types of stuff. This could be a committee that could be involved in that, of always trying to have that evolution of improvement. But again, that's just my perspective at this moment. There's not consensus with that at this point. And the key thing is, we have a very specific charge right now, not so broad as what I've been talking about. So I think having that resolution at this point for the next year, that kind of takes care of what the expectations of the subcommittee is. And then maybe within this next 12 months, as we have more discussions and have understanding that maybe it will make sense to make this a standing committee. And if it does, and it's approved by the council, then we would do exactly what you just recommended and get this in line with the cycle of May to May like all the other ones.
And you don't think you would know that by May?
I don't think so. That's just my humble opinion.
And at the recommendation of Mr. Marshall, this is the way the resolution was written. Both are certainly viable options, but both make a lot of sense. And we had a first and a second on the floor. Is that correct? I can't remember if we had the second. Satisfied, Bonnie, on that answer? Yep.
Just wondered.
Yep. Any other discussion? With a first and a second on the floor to approve the consideration of the resolution, please indicate in that favor by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Item 11.4, actually, it's not even on here, is discussion and proposal of Title 40. I know Mr. Ainsley did the staff report, but I got Mark Marshall down. But if you guys want to both speak, I'm certainly welcome to that, but I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The point of this item is just to get some preliminary input from the council to hopefully be able to provide some direction so that the city attorneys are able to prepare a draft resolution that more fully fits what your desired outcome is for this rally ordinance. If you look in our existing titles, we have numerous areas of rally-related topics that are kind of spread throughout our ordinances. Examples, we have regulations for oil change, for temporary oil change vendors, also for temporary dyno testing regulations, temporary vendor fees, temporary or special sanitation fees, and rally-related signage changes. The first concept within this rally ordinance would be to combine all of those existing chapters that are spread throughout the entire ordinance or the entire ordinance book and have it placed in one area. That way, if you are a temporary vendor or if you have something to do with the rally, you would just logically look at the rally ordinance and it would be easier to find. So everyone is understanding that's already within the statutory authority of the city attorney. The city attorney can make changes to our layout and construction of the ordinances, change something from Title 11 to Title 13 or change it from 11.1 and make it 11.5 if that just makes more sense logically. So those are all changes that our city attorney would be able to do independent, but also before doing that, we want to make sure that that makes logical sense and that kind of fits the point of what the council has been discussing. And then the other thing is to look at new potential sections that we currently do not have in the ordinance. With that, we are not looking necessarily to create new regulations for the rally, but instead looking at areas that pretty much have been happening year after year without changes. Those end up being resolutions that are incredibly long, that take a tremendous amount of time every year to put together, and usually when we do that, there ends up being 2 or 3 typos, and so then we end up having a revision at the next council meeting because there was a typo when we were inputting it from one version into the other. So just to be able to have it be acknowledged that that is the typical standard operating procedure for the rally. So the example would be the road closures. Those road closures in the past decade really have not changed. So the idea would be to have that within the ordinance that during or starting the first Friday of the rally and completing the last Sunday of the rally, these are the roads that would be closed, including the changing traffic patterns on West Main, all of those sorts of things that have been happening for years, that would be made well aware. That way, if you're trying to purchase property in that area, you're able to look and you know that you're buying property in downtown, you're able to look easily in the ordinance and say, what happens to traffic during the rally? And you would find that instead of necessarily looking at the past couple years worth of ordinances. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be changes. So for example, if the Clydesdales came again during a rally, and we would end up having to, again, not have parking in the center median for the first Friday of the rally so that, there's enough or there's adequate spacing for the Clydesdales to come through. At that point, the rally and events director would prepare a resolution that would really just be focused on that change. And so that change would be for that specific time period of the rally for 4 hours or 8 hours or something like that. There would be a slightly different change of parking. That also allows the meeting to be focused on the very few things that would be different compared to the last several years. So that's one proposal that we would add to this rally ordinance is our traffic plan, so that it's there. We know year after year what it would be, and then in the late spring, early summer, we might bring a very shortened resolution that would just highlight the minor changes for bike shows or parades or something like that. In addition, moving and delivery truck parking. That has been something that has been brought forward by the council's 2023 rally priorities, which is a suggestion that was brought forward by downtown businesses, which is to limit the ability of delivery trucks to be able to park along Main Street throughout the entire month of July. And so that, if that's a concept the council would support, that would be something we would suggest being included in this title, as well as if the council wants to have a section of Main Street, probably one block, that would be bike-only parking for like the week before rally. That has been another thing that's identified in your 2023 rally priorities, and that has been brought up by downtown businesses to start to get the look of the rally, as well as to add additional parking, to have one block of Main Street be bike-only parking. We're not talking the center median, just the side parking, to have that be bike-only parking, as well as open container. If the council wants to continue with that, have the rules for open container during the rally be permanently placed in there so that there's not confusion as to what the time limits might be or what the signage requirements are, that sort of thing. That way we can, as staff, focus more on implementation of those council desires. Then the rally and events director came up with a proposed third section of this, which would include other significant events, such as the Camaro rally and the Mustang rally. Those are events that we've been holding for more than a decade. Again, every year for more than a decade, we've been having resolutions brought forward to the council that change traffic patterns, even though those traffic patterns really are the same year after year after year. It would make sense to be able to say, these are other significant events that cause changes to the traffic patterns, so let's just implement that. That way, if you're looking at purchasing property downtown, you're aware of it. Or if you're trying to find, how does the Camaro rally work, you can find all of those regulations within the ordinance. We're saying that not because we prepared all of this, but before going through the effort of preparing all this, we want to see if that conceptually is something that the council would support, or if some of those items are something that you're not okay with, or you want more discussion, let us know. Or if there's other items besides those that you would like us to look at, let us know. That way, hopefully, within the next month or so, we can get a draft ordinance and get that put together and presented to you. But before going through that effort, we would like to know if this is the direction that the council is really looking for.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add to that, I'll start with an anecdote. And I began my legal career as a law clerk. And later in my legal career, I was a magistrate judge. And in those two roles, I was taught that the most valuable asset in a district court is the time and attention of the United States District Judge. And I think that analogy is applicable to your role as members of the City Council. So many of the elements of the rally ordinance are questions that you have addressed, made decisions on, and when they come up in the following year, they're contentious for the same reasons that you had previously decided. Well, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I'm also saying it can be seen as a waste of your time to continually revisit issues that you have resolved. One of those items would be the noise ordinance. And I think there's a lot of merit in taking this as a two-step process. Step one would be gathering those non-controversial items that are identified in ordinance and directing me simply to rearrange those in a different title. Phase two of the process would be to address substantive ordinances which should be discussed at council, brought forward in open public meetings where the public is invited to participate and share their input, and only adopt substantive resolutions after that input, but at the same time freeing staff to allow you to more effectively devote your time to council matters.
Well, I think that's very sensible for sure, and I think this has been a point of discussion for at least a couple years.
About 12.
Good to see we're making progress, Mr. Vachon.
I do want to ask the question, though. There are certain elements of this that would be placed in this year-round, which I support. But, for example, does it only apply to the rally, a specific time frame for a specific number of days? They raise the question to Dino. If a Dino company moves in here on the 1st of July, there's nothing to stop them from doing that. Some of these ordinances need to be inclusive. So what the council puts in this ordinance, I don't know how we do that. I'll leave that to the bright boys in legal. They need to be, some of them need to be year-round.
And part of that, Mike, and I appreciate your point for sure, but the temporary vending permits is part of the structure that is put for bookends on the rally, with 2 12-day intervals is all they can have for temporary vending permits. So we do have that capped as far as 24 days.
But I don't believe we have anything to stop a Dino company from coming
Right.
in here
Year-round, yep.
year-round,
Yep.
or anything else.
Mr. Mayor. Go ahead. You know, anytime we can get process improvement to be more efficient, I think is a good thing. Some concerns is I seize the advantages, not sure what the disadvantages are. It would be nice to have a discussion what maybe some of the second and third order effects might be. For example, and I don't know if this would be true or not, but it looks like you might have some duplicate actions in 2 different parts of the ordinance. Because you have to do the same action for maybe a small event that's not been going on for a long time, and you have the ones for maybe those 3 events in this ordinance. So there's duplication there in terms of what paperwork or the requirements are and all that type of stuff, and maintaining synergy between that document when you split things out. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, though. I'm just saying part of this is looking at it. We've looked at all the advantages, or at least it sounds like we've, over 12 years, have looked over all the advantages. But it'd be interesting to have a conversation on what maybe some of those disadvantages may be. It probably doesn't weigh out enough to be able not to do it, but I like to kind of go in it with my eyes completely wide open.
Well, to that point, Aaron, I'd like to make the comment, and I thought about this as Mr. Marshall was speaking, but the flip side of the coin is the fact that, and Daniel was speaking to it too, is the fact that it takes time for city staff to prepare these resolutions. They bring it before council, we discuss it, and we have an action. Well, all that being said, that gives the possibility for engagement of the public annually, and for that specific council to make their own processes. Now, the rally's a very big machine, and we don't want to disrupt that, by saying, well, we're not going to close the roads anymore, is my opinion on that. But I think there's merit on the flip side of saying, hey, this is brought forward. It gives you the opportunity to talk about it. And at that meeting, there wasn't any discussion on it, so we move forward. I mean, so both sides of the coin are apparent for sure. But the processes, the efficiencies, and the fact that a lot of the stuff we just do. I mean, it's just going to happen. But the balance is definitely needed, so point taken.
One additional point, if I may, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. This approach to create a rally ordinance gives the city the opportunity to hand out a single document to those who want to come and participate in the rally that says, if you want to be a vendor, if you want to be a sponsor, these are the ordinances that govern your conduct during rally. The second point is that I agree entirely with Councilor Bashand that the rally ordinances should be defined in their preamble as applicable only to the rally and identifying the dates which they apply to. And if that can be accomplished with regard to the Camaro rally and the Mustang rally, so much the better. But as I recall, the Mustang rally or the Camaro rally, the dates have been in flux because of a conflict with other events in the area. And if that issue can be sorted out, and we have fixed time on the city events calendar, then we can define that they apply to the Camaro rally, the Mustang rally during those specific dates.
Well, I think part of the challenge is, I think it was 2015 or 2016 possibly when we changed. We brought clarity and eliminated the difficulty of people understanding when the motorcycle rally occurred and made it first Friday of August. Well, I think if I remember correctly, for example, the Camaro rallies during a certain weekend, I think it was Father's Day weekend, and then the Mustang rallies over Labor Day weekend, all those fluctuate along the calendar back and forth, just like the old days of the rally, which used to do, which created. My whole point is if we do find that, it has to be clarity to that specific past practices and what the future plans are. And whether it's the third weekend in June or what dated around Father's Day or however it's figured out. But those things need to be clear.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ainsley stated that it's obviously within your purview to rearrange some of the ordinances. Could you kind of address the procedure of that and how, I mean, we vote on these ordinances, we publish them, they come into effect 20 days after being published, so when they're adjusted, do we republish those? I mean, what's the procedure when we would potentially be cherry picking from multiple ordinances to put into this new one?
Okay. My interpretation, Councilor Forrester, is that the statutory authority given to the Office of City Attorney is to move ordinances within the entire ordinance book. That authority does not include any ability to change the substance of the ordinance, only where it's located. And because of that, I don't think that a separate ordinance or resolution is necessary to permit that to take place. This may sound aggressive, but I think it is within my purview to do that. I would not ever undertake such a task without specific council direction. So if you say, go ahead and do that, Marshall, I will come back and I will present to you, here's my suggestion about rearranging these ordinances within our council book and nothing more. And if there's any substantive change, then it must go through the entire ordinance approval process.
I wasn't trying to insinuate that, you were taking an overstep of bounds. It was more of, if we took something out of an existing ordinance for reorganization, how would we account for that missing chapter? I mean, do you reference Title 40, so to speak?
I think that our ordinances have a notes section where we can identify that Article 13.3 sub 2 has been moved to this new location. And since that occurs in a note to the ordinance, it is not a part of the ordinance itself. That is consistent with state law that says notes and cut lines and titles to statutes comprise no part of the ordinance. So it is just a historical note for the benefit of those who use the document.
But to take it full circle, I think it would be sensible that this council and future council's requests not only give you the direction to make such suggestions to rearrangement, but to also bring back this is what we did when this happened kind of situation. If there was ever direction given to the city attorney's office that said, please condense all Title 18 and all Title 32 animals that cross over, and when you brought that, when that was completed, I would feel it'd be necessary to at least bring it to council's attention and put it in the minutes on the council.
To take it a step further and to continue the analogy, the South Dakota Code is reenacted every year. So the reenacted code includes all of the new statutes, the amendments, and the revisions that were undertaken by the Office of Code Counsel. So you have a new code adopted every year that provides the current working form. So there's no doubt about what
the source document is, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Bonnie, what do you have to add?
I just got confused, so I need to ask a question for clarification. So you're talking about extracting everything that's pertinent to Raleigh out of its current location of relevance and making it into one Raleigh code? Or are you talking about leaving things where they are and creating a Raleigh handbook?
We're talking about
Ordinance.
we're taking everything throughout all 39 existing titles that the city of Sturgis has passed, enacted, and put into ordinance. Everything that is associated with this discussion or the rally and possibly other rallies within our town will be removed from those titles with a note that states so, and then also put in its own title 40 with a different heading for easy access for outsiders and for business people and things that are looking to find clarity. Over the years, you have to look at very many different chapters. We've gotten good at it, but it would be a lot more efficient for those that don't understand where to find it if it was within its own chapter, with its own title.
But if you created a handbook of those ordinances relevant to only to Raleigh, you wouldn't disrupt the 39 that you have as far as relevance. Have the easy to find what applies to me for Raleigh.
Well, I think that was the point of what Mr. Marshall was saying on the note. It cannot affect the intent or the cognitive value of what the ordinance is saying. If it's simply removing and moving and it leaves everything the same, then that can be done. But
It can be done, but is it going to be messy and more confusing to have those pieces?
The specific
Not there?
answer to that question is no.
Okay.
And the reason for that answer is that over the course of the last 30 or 40 years, agencies within South Dakota government have created their own handbooks of governing statutes and administrative rules and compiled those without any change in the organic law. And by doing that, and through the editorial process, they've created inconsistencies that may arise as a result of typographical errors or transposition of words. And it's been the state experience, to my understanding, that those problems are eliminated if you just codify everything that was related to a specific topic in one location. so people don't have to become a master at the art of indexing to find what they're looking for.
Yeah, because you wouldn't be able to tweak one without tweaking the other. I mean, if you touch them, you've got to touch them both.
Exactly, and the city has not always been good at that because there are internal references in the Code of Ordinances to other ordinances, and I have seen circumstances, although I can't identify them, where they're changed in one spot but not in the other, and it makes a mess.
So where do the move notes, where do the forwarding addresses go? Are they embedded, are they put where the missing piece was?
Correct,
Or are
yep.
they a summary of moves?
The state practice is to identify at the end of the section, or if the section is removed in its entirety, at the point where that section was in the ordinance book, that this has been moved to there.
Okay, so the to location is mounted in the from location where it was
Yes.
taken from. Okay, that makes sense.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So I may be throwing a wrench into all this previous discussion about not revising, but I have a question as far as maybe it is time, as we are creating Title 40, that we look at vendor fees and and increasing those. When you look where they are now, Title 31, licensing of temporary businesses, it looks like 2017 was the last time they were updated. Is that correct? 2014. Okay, 2014. And so when you go in, it's 31.02.03.03 fee and duration of license, and it's for the vendor fees. Part B, the smallest vending area is 100 square feet or less, and that's approximately 10 by 10. We charge $560. The largest area is more than 1,200 square feet, which I think is 40 by 50, or I don't know, maybe. And that's $1,500 that we charge. I think when we look at revising these vendor fees, a good example for us to turn to is the Black Hills Stock Show. When you go to their website, what they charge for an 8 by 10 and a 10 by 10 is $1,100. And that's on the lower level. In LaCroix Hall, the big hall by the old arena, LaCroix Hall, they charge $1,300 to $1,500 for a 10 by 10 spot. Rushmore Hall, again, $1,500. When you go to the upper level of the stock show, $700 is the minimum, up to $1,100. So I think it's time that we look at this, and I certainly, the argument's going to come, well, we're trying to gouge the vendors. No, we are trying to just keep up with the costs that we've seen, the increase in those in the last 9 years since this has been updated. And I think the stock show is a comparable event to what we hold. And again, I don't want to throw a wrench into this, but I think that we need to revisit our vendor fees.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
First of all, Becca, I don't disagree with you, but the city of Rapid City owns every vending area at that venue. Every vending area here is privately owned, so there's going to be some issues there. But that needs to be handled in committee. You got a rally and events committee, which I think you're the chairman. I think it needs to go there. But a question on the proposed ordinance is it our intent to gather up all the other events, the major events? When we have Music on Main, is that going to be so that there's one place to go to? You've got the two Mustang Rally, the Camaro Rally, and any other event that comes to town. And you can almost bet there's going to be special events at the brand new aquatics park. So it needs to be inclusive of all other events as well, as long as we're writing this ordinance. It's just food for thought, that's all I'm throwing out.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think that's an excellent point, Councilor Bashan. What I would offer as a suggestion is the authorization of this ordinance for Rally, Camaro, and Mustang, so that you see a product. And once you have a product before you, you can say, hey, this is a terrible idea. We shouldn't apply this to any of our other events. Or you can say, this is a good idea. We can fine tune it. Or you can say, it's a great idea. Let's adopt this ordinance across all the events that come to the city. But that creates options for you to see it, review it, and contemplate how it might apply to other events.
Thank you, I like that. Yeah, we can remove the question.
Well, no action intended on this. This is the first step in the ordinance process, so just a discussion. I'd offer one more opportunity for the public or council to add anything to this discussion at this point. None being heard and no other action needed on that brings us to item 12. Other matters that may become for the council. Opportunity to discuss non-agenda items briefly. Does the public have anything to add tonight for other matters? How about the council? Anything to add tonight for other matters? We do have a need for executive session. No agendaized action on the backside of executive session, so I assume no action anticipated. But is there a request for, or is there an action or a consideration for exec from anyone? Motion.
So moved.
Got a first by Dean and a second by Preston. All those in favor of the motion to go to exec, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. It's 8:11. We'll get into exec here in about 5 minutes.
10. No, I agree. We need all of that guidance we can get. Thank you. That's good. And that's probably what we need. It gives, it gives rally events a lot more credence. Okay.
My concern is how does a person know that there's something somewhere else, that if they go there and think they've seen it when they haven't. And most days I don't sit down and get up and fill in. I might sit down and have something to eat at the end of the night and get up to go to bed, but other than that, you know. I just keep moving. Everything comes with me when I do. It's what I know. Of course, I've always said, you know, like, I was really worried about my COVID recovery because I said, you know, if you don't give me any germs, if you just lay me down for 2 months like COVID did, I'm half dead when it's over. Oh, and I did. And I haven't been sick. And then you make me sick, dude. I may not be able to get it again.
Well, he talks about maybe having a cup of coffee, so maybe the next couple of weeks, I'm having coffee with Francie tomorrow morning.
Oh, are you? Oh, she always does it early in the morning.
I might be gone the rest of the week.
We're up and live. We're back in regular session. Last item is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We got a first by Mike,
Second.
second by Kevin. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. We're adjourned, 9:52.